Hey, welcome students from Intro Psych, or I guess Introduction to Biological and Cognitive Psychology, if you'd like. I have the pleasure today to be here with my friend, Pete Bombaci. And of course, Pete is going to play a large role in the class because our final capstone project, or at least for some of you, for half of you, will be something we're going to call the GenWell Challenge. And it's you sort of working for this guy over here, working for Pete, so to speak. So generally, I mean, just to give you a feel, the idea of this final project is it's what we call an experiential learning project. And it's like instead of asking you to write some essay or something that you know is just going to end up in a trash can somewhere, we wanted to give you something real and make you part of something that's going on now, and potentially where the work that you do could have value that goes well beyond the classroom and could have impact that goes well beyond the classroom. That's what we all hope. So Pete over here, my good friend, why don't we start before maybe we give you a little bit of a pre-Genwell, Pete, give them a sense of the history that led you to Genwell, and let's go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And first off, a huge thank you to you, Steve, as a member of the GenWell Scientific Advisory Board, and as who's become a friend because of your commitment to helping make the world a more connected place. Here we are today, so I'm grateful for the opportunity. To everybody who's out there, my name is Pete Bombaci, and before I launched GenWell in 2016, which is Canada's Human Connection Movement, and our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by getting people connected face to face. I spent 20 years in the beverage alcohol industry, and I also ran Movember Canada, the mustache charity, for 5 years. And through my entire career, everything that I've seen that has succeeded because of connection. When I think back to the beverage alcohol industry and I think of happy hour, and I can always remember that, if a place had cheap drinks but nobody showed up, you wouldn't go. You'd go to the place where people were lined up. And in November, whether it was because of our mustaches that made us all feel connected to one another when we walked down the street and kind of looked at each other and went, "Hey, Mo bro," or "Mo sister," the Mo sister is saying to the Mo bro, not
I
pointing
was
at
gonna
women.
say,
Just
I
that's
wasn't
not
gonna
that's
go there.
not.
I
Just to
was
be
gonna
clear, just to be clear. Yeah, or actually about the fact that we were all coming together to help, those that were struggling, whether it was eventually men's mental health or whether it was prostate cancer or testicular cancer. The reality is we all wanted to be part of feeling good about having purpose in our lives.
go.
So in 2016, inspired by the summer blackout of 2003, when, I experienced, everybody in this class will probably be too young to remember this, but people on the Eastern Seaboard, 50 million people went without power for 2 to 7 days. And what
Yeah.
happened initially is that everybody looked out for each other because in times of crisis, we don't care about our next assignment or our
Yeah.
next meeting or our next anything. Frankly, all we care about is our loved ones and the people around us. We check on our loved ones and then we go outside and we checked on the neighbor and we checked on our colleagues and we checked on the people. And I have stories from workplaces and bars downtown where people sat for hours connecting with people that they'd never met before, that most days we would walk by and barely acknowledge their existence, but they spent hours, like 8 and 10 hours, drank till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, or walked streets talking to strangers
Yeah.
because when in times of crisis, it's almost like we were given permission to be more human.
Yeah.
And so this was the inspiration. 2016, I launched GenWell, Canada's Human Connection Movement. And although up until the pandemic, most people didn't really engage in the conversation, the pandemic gave us all an opportunity to feel what it might feel like to be disconnected or feeling socially isolated and feeling lonely from other people. And I think the last thing I'll say, just to say this, is a big part of our message today, and this is very relevant to every young person in the world today, is that loneliness is not a crisis. Loneliness is no different than thirst and hunger. It's a simple reaction to feeling disconnection from others. And if we do something about it when we feel those emotions, we go grab a coffee, go to the dog park, have a lunch with a friend, call up somebody, then there's nothing to fear in loneliness. What we need to stop doing, and this is unfortunately the way the system works, is we wait till people are sick. Then we can label them with an issue, whether it's mental health or physical health, and we go, I know how to solve that. Well,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's too late. And so our mission is to actually swim upstream with a positive, proactive, and inclusive message that everybody recognizes that the solution to our disconnected world is all of our responsibility, and we can all be part of the solution.
Yeah, and let me just sort of emphasize one thing that Pete just mentioned there that's relevant to the course, of course. We all know that mental health is, really a real challenge for society now, that there's a lot of people looking for a lot of therapeutic support, at the sort of end, as Pete's mentioning, once they're really feeling in crisis. And we just don't have enough therapists, to be quite honest. And so, a logic that Pete's suggesting here is to go more preventative. And I always love it's Desmond Tutu's line, I think, that at some point
Yeah, yeah,
some of us have to stop pulling people out of the river, walk upstream, and figure out why they're falling in the first place. And so that notion of upstream solutions, taking care of mental health in a more preventative way, if you do that, if you think, well, what is that thing that people could be doing that would maximally impact their mental health downstream? It turns out, if you look at the literature and you go through all the variables, and Pete will come to our class and he'll show us a lot of this data, but the one thing is social connection. It is the most important variable in terms of supporting physical health and mental health and success and happiness in general. And so, this is what Pete has really kind of brought home to me. I always talked about social health as one of a constellation of things that I would suggest to people. But then when you look at that constellation, it's the thing. I mean, if you're going to pick one, that's the thing. And so that's, what we're going to be talking about. And of course, part of the trick here is it's really nice to hear, oh, you should just have a few more friends and you would be happier. And that's true. But it's not always easy to get friends either. And there are issues that can get in the way of that, including sort of social anxiety, discomfort talking to other human beings. And, when Pete talked about thirst and hunger, well, none of us feel at all worried about going and grabbing a snack if we're a little hungry, and we don't worry about grabbing a drink of water if we're a little thirsty. But if we're feeling lonely, somehow we worry about talking to a stranger, going to a coffee shop and just reaching out to somebody. And that's where it gets a little tricky. And so part of this assignment, a big part of this assignment, is meant to first, really make you realize this is important. It's worth the time and effort to get past that anxiety, to make that step, that there's a lot waiting for you there. And frankly, we want to convince you of that. And that's really part of what's going on. So Pete and I, when we're talking about these ideas, one of the thoughts we had about how to get word out, how to get to people to understand the importance of social connection, was the idea of a class project, and specifically the idea of a GenWell sponsored project that we hope to share widely, that we're going to call the GenWell Challenge. So you guys are helping us sort of form this GenWell Challenge, which we then hope to spread to college and universities Canada wide. So you're kind of the guinea pigs. You're going to help us do this well. And that's fantastic. And so what I want you to do right now is you kind of have a sense of Pete, the guy, and he's a great guy. I really enjoy, I mean, he's such a great guy. I'll just mention this. After barely knowing him, he allowed my wife and my two grandkids to go hang out at his cottage for a few days. And we just had a great time. And the kind of guy that shares a cottage is a good friend indeed. Thank you, Pete, for that. But I now want you to
Hey,
kind of change your
class,
mindset.
you're welcome too. Come on up.
Yeah, there you go. It's only 2,000 people. I'm sure the lake would love that. So what we're now going to do, though, is we're going to kind of change. So we're going to go into the simulation world, and we're going to say, okay, you guys are going to be put into groups of, I think, 5 or 6 students this time. I think we're going to have a group. I think 5 is starting to feel like the magic number now. And we want each of you to imagine you're a marketing company, a small marketing company, and Pete's your first client. So Pete walks in the door and he says, "We need help getting our message out." And so I don't know. I'll just sort of throw it over to you, Pete. If that was it, if you were talking to a small marketing company, how would you kind of approach this?
Yeah, I'd say, hey guys, we've got a great opportunity here. This message is a message that nobody has ever heard before. We've educated people on exercise and eating well, sleep, water, don't drink too much, and don't smoke. But as Steve has pointed out, we now understand that social connection is as important, if not more important, than all the things that we've educated people on for 50 years. We got 40 million people in this country who all see themselves in different ways. Some people see themselves through a demographic. So some people see themselves as a senior. Some people see them as I work for a living. Some people see themselves as a mom, a dad. Some people see them as a student or a kid, or, you know, we're trying to awaken 40 million people to this message, but everybody sees themselves differently. So the challenge that we have, and the challenge that I'm looking forward to getting your support on, is what message resonates with you? And when I say you, it's what's your persona? Are you talking to seniors? Are you talking to the people? Are you talking to CEOs? Because over 50% of CEOs say they feel lonely on a regular basis. It's in some cases for new moms, it's 90%. Young people, it was 70%, before the pandemic, that felt lonely during the course of the year. The reality is everybody can feel lonely. And what we're trying to do in seeking your support is saying, how do we message this to each one of those personas, each one of those groups of people, so that when they see the message in whatever, is it a static image? Is it a video? Is it something unique? A song? I don't know, a carving, that everybody goes, I get it. I know what they're saying to me, and it's going to impact me to make positive change in my life. So that's the brief I'm looking to solve for, Steve, in how we communicate the growing issue of social isolation, disconnection, and loneliness, and more importantly, the power of social connection as the solution to our disconnected world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to highlight that last point where you may have heard of the loneliness epidemic, and in fact, if you look around the world, you'll find organizations that will describe themselves as focused on combating loneliness or focused on the loneliness issue. Where with Pete, you're going to hear more about social connection. And social connection is the solution. Loneliness is the problem. And so there is really this notion of, yes, we can continue to talk about how many people are lonely, and it's absolutely true. But it's really cool if we can get to that next step and give them the solution to that and really focus on that. So really, if I now try to put some more little parameters around what Pete just said, here's what we'd like you to do. First of all, pick a target market. Pick some group. So Pete just mentioned a bunch of different, and it's going to be a cultural group that you're familiar with. I would pick a group that you're familiar with and that you feel like you know how to communicate with, because this is the power you guys have, right? You guys are connected to communities and such that we're not. And the more of these that we can reach, the better. And so if there's some group of people you think I would really like to bring this message to, and then we would like you to create a public service announcement. And I'm going to use that term as generally as I can. I love that Pete said statue. You can create a statue. Really what you want to do is communicate this message to that group. And so you want to use some medium that you think will be of interest to that group, that will be effective. If you want to reach museum goers, a statue or something might be a good way to kind of grab them. So so sort of two things I want you to do. One, come up with that PSA. Talk amongst yourselves, collaborate. Imagine yourself a small company trying to do good by Pete. You want to bring him a PSA that he's going to love, and figure out what that'll be, but do that with a market in mind. So why do you think this would work for that market? And so in addition to the PSA, I'm going to ask you to submit a short, what we call reflection piece, where you just basically walk us through your thought process. Here's what we did, and here's why we did it. Here's why we thought this would be good. Any psychology you can bring into that, fantastic. And so that's your task, really. That'll be step one. Go together with your group, create a public service announcement. There will be another step after that where you all will get to see some of the PSAs that other teams created, and we're going to ask you to judge those. Now, I'm going to have another guest. We'll do an interview from UTSC, a communications person, who's going to talk us through what makes a good PSA. And we're going to end that session with basically a rubric, a nice clear rubric that says, here are the characteristics that a good PSA has. And that is the rubric that you will then use to score each other's. Based on your scores, we're going to be able to find the top 10. And the top 10 PSAs will then go to Pete and others at GenWell and some people at UTSC, who will then do a final group of judging and figure out who the top 3 are. Now, we haven't really talked what exactly is going to happen with these, but one thing I'll say for sure, if Pete sees stuff he likes, he's going to want to use it. if you create great PSAs, he would love to use those PSAs. And of course, all of you should feel very welcome sharing your PSA. Pete and I would love that. Share social media, do whatever, feel pride in your work, throw it out there. But in addition, some of these could end up on the official GenWell website if they're high quality. I'm sure, as you notice with Pete, he's a swag king. I'm sure there may be a bit of swag involved too. If you can reach the top three, where there'll be some GenWell stuff, or maybe even the top 10, we can have some swag for everybody in the top 10. There will also, by the way, everyone who makes the top 10, I will write a recommendation letter for that essentially says, in order to have done that well, here are the positive characteristics that you've had to demonstrate. That'll help you get positions in labs or potential jobs. And I will ask Pete this year at least, because it could get really big going forward. But for the top three, if Pete might do the same, that for people in the top three, if he might write a short letter of recommendation that you can also use to help you with any opportunities that may arise. So that's really it. That's the idea. Except we really hope that you embrace this message, and beyond this project, we would love if you became messengers, just in a general sense. The PSA itself, but once you understand how important social connection is, do you notice people in your group that are maybe less connected, or that are drifting away? And if you took the time to kind of bring them back, to connect them, watch the difference in them. I mean, you'll see how much they appreciate that. And so if you can live it and talk it, that would be fantastic. It's part of our sort of mission that we're on right now. And I'm really lucky. I will say one other thing, by the way. How did we get connected? During the pandemic, I was out talking about things like social connection. Pete was out, I'll say, walking. He was out doing it. He was helping people actually, not just understand the importance, but how to then go from that understanding to actually, changing a culture of a workplace or something to be one that supports that. So I thought, I'm talking the talk, he's walking the walk. It's about time I walk the walk a little bit as well. So that's where we kind of join forces, and we're inviting all of you guys to come aboard and get on the social connection bandwagon. I can tell you, I've not met one jerk since I've been part of the GenWell group. Everybody is committed, everybody's caring, and it's really nice to see so many people put so much time and effort into trying to help their fellow human beings. And that's really what this is about at the core.
And Steve, if I can just jump in for a second, just build on everything you said. One of the most important things I want to make sure that everybody understands, and Steve's touched on it a bit, but how serious we are when we say that we will use some of the content that is created here. Just to give you a sense, we have a campaign called Face to Face February. It was created by the students of Centennial College 5 years ago. It has now become one of the key pillars of our campaign, and we always acknowledge the fact that it was built by students for students. We are just about to launch our Talk to a Stranger week at the end of November, 18th to the 24th of November. We just had the students of Humber College develop a program that's going to promote Talk to a Stranger week on campus at Humber College. And I'm confident that that program will run as an ongoing campus program across the country moving forward, because it's so smart. And so I just want to really reinforce that this is not just doing an assignment to get a grade. I think everybody needs to recognize that you have an opportunity right now to truly make a difference in the lives of Canadians. And as I talk to you today, we know our Talk to a Stranger week is going to Germany and likely going to the United States this November.
Very cool.
And so your PSA could literally be shown around the world, because the world is awakening to this crisis of disconnection and loneliness. And you get to be part of the solution by, working hard and really hunkering down and being strategic as to how you want to solve it by getting the message into the hands of the people who need it. And so I'm just going to say thank you to Steve, and thank you to everybody who's part of the class. And I will make a personal commitment that I'm going to see you at the start of the class, but whoever comes, whoever ends up in top three or top 5 or 10, Steve, I think we need to host a little social somewhere, whether it's on campus, if that's the easiest place. And GenWell will come out, and we'll certainly provide some food and some refreshments so that people can build connection, not just not just with the people that you worked with, but with the other groups that were part of this, because together we can make the world a happier and healthier place, one face-to-face conversation at a time.
That's fantastic. I think we just leave it there. I think that is great. I look forward to that event, hanging out with a bunch of you there as well. So, Pete, I just
Does
want to say,
everybody know
thank
that
you.
you sing in a band too, Steve? And maybe you can, strike up the band for the celebration.
Pressure. We'll see. We'll see what works. That's possible. Pete,
Professor
I do. I really
Jordan
want to
likes
thank
to
you for all
rock it
you're
out,
doing.
just so you know.
Yeah, for all you're doing for Canadians in general. Everything from Pete comes straight from the heart. And so he will be in class. I will have a video of that class here as well as part of this module. But if you get a chance to attend that class when you see him, I recommend you do it. Theoretically, only 500 people can fit in that room. We'll see what we can do on that day. But we will also be live streaming it, or at least posting the video of it, which you'll be able to see. But I would recommend, if you're able that morning, roll out of bed and come on in. You'll be happy you did. You'll leave feeling motivated, energized, and ready to rock. So I highly rate it. But Pete, thank you so much for all you're doing, and let's see where we can take this.
Steve, thank you for everything you've done, from a phone call one day to say, "Hey, I just saw you on TV. Would you be interested?" to probably 3, 4 years later, and you're still, one of the biggest champions we have. And I'm grateful to you and to your entire class for being a part of the solution.